I froze outside the conference room door, my hand trembling slightly around the hot cup of coffee. Marcus, the only colleague I still trusted in the company, spoke in a sharp, tense voice that rang out clearly. "Don't you dare pull that again, Leonard. You are not going to steal credit from Eric one more time." Inside, Leonard, the newly hired vice president of sales from New York, replied with a calmness that made you want to punch him. "You've got it wrong, Marcus. I'm simply preparing for the signing meeting with JTX Logistics. I've overseen the strategy from the start. Eric's just been executing the plan." I pushed open the door. The tension hit me like a wall. Leonard sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed in an expensive suit without a single wrinkle. Marcus turned, his eyes sparking with a flicker of hope. "Eric, tell him. Who created the proposal for JTX? Who flew to Denver 3 times to present and revise it after every round of feedback?" I placed the coffee cup on the table and locked eyes with Leonard. That entire deck was built from scratch by me. No templates, no reused data. I spent 3 months studying their supply chain. Every slide was crafted around a tailored optimization solution specifically for JTX's operational model. Leonard nodded slowly as if it didn't matter. "I'm not denying your effort, but the thing is, we need a different image going into final negotiations. You know JTX expects someone with global experience." I clenched my fists, not because of his words, but because of the tone. Like I was just the foundation layer, while the spotlight was always reserved for people like him. "I'm 36, head of business development at Vistoratech, a logistics software firm based in Austin, Texas. In 6 years, I've never taken a day off without a legitimate reason. I don't have an Ivy League MBA, just a bachelor's degree from Texas State, framed and hanging in my office. But I was the one who brought in the biggest deal in company history, over $38 million over 4 years, from JTX Logistics. And I was also the only person in the company who knew that the CEO of JTX, Hannah Myers, used to be my college roommate. We spent 2 years living in a rundown apartment on the west side of Houston. We still met for coffee whenever she was in Austin. But I had never once brought up that connection in a meeting, because I understood the value of trust and real capability. When Leonard walked out, Marcus turned to me, jaw clenched. "He's going to try to push you out of the Monday signing." I nodded. "Let him try. Hannah won't sign unless I'm there." Back at my desk, an email from the CEO popped up in my inbox. Subject line: "Executive, strategy, meeting, mandatory attendance." I didn't need to open it to know what was coming. I took a sip of coffee. The bitterness familiar, almost like a warning. In this world, people don't care what you've done, they only care who you are. The meeting started at 8:30 a.m. I arrived 10 minutes early and took the last seat in the 14th floor boardroom. Every surface gleaming under sharp light from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Austin. A walnut table stretched over 10 feet, polished to the point I could see my reflection in it as I set down my notebook. CEO Craig Hudson sat at the head. Lean, silver hair neatly combed, eyes hidden behind rimless glasses. To his left was Leonard, expression as cold as ever, even as he nodded in polite acknowledgement. To his right sat Helen, the CFO, alongside 2 other senior executives from legal and operations. Craig didn't waste time. "Eric, I hear good things from Leonard. The JTX draft is finalized?" I opened my notebook and spoke evenly. "Almost. JTX has confirmed they'll sign this coming Monday morning. Hannah specifically requested my presence at the signing." Craig nodded, then shifted his posture, clasping his hands like a bridge in front of his face. "We've given this a lot of thought. While we appreciate your effort, the executive board feels we need a different representative for the final stage." I said nothing. Leonard leaned in slightly, smiling like a man sliding a knife in with silk gloves. "I'll take it from here. You've done an excellent job on the groundwork." I looked at Craig. "Is there any issue with my performance?" Craig looked down at the paper in front of him, tone flat. "No, you've exceeded expectations, but with a client of this magnitude, we prioritize Fortune 500 experience. Leonard has a more suitable profile." I knew exactly what they weren't saying. Leonard had an MBA from Wharton and 3 Fortune 500s on his resume. Me, a bachelor's from Texas State and a career that started delivering printouts between departments. Helen looked like she wanted to say something, but stayed silent. I nodded once, flipping a page. Then I'll transfer all documents, correspondence logs, and the implementation plan JTX approved. No one replied. I walked out just as the clock struck 9. The feeling wasn't disappointment. It was a cold wind pressing down the length of my spine. That night, I stayed at the office until after 10. I handed everything off to Leonard with meticulous care, not a single note missing. The internal system logged over 60 files sent, summarizing almost a year of work. Friday morning, another email arrived, this one CCing HR. An urgent meeting at 11 a.m. I walked in to find a pale yellow envelope already waiting on the chair. Craig was there, along with the head of HR, a woman I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in 6 years. Craig began in the tone of someone reciting a rehearsed eulogy. Eric, first, thank you for your contributions. However, the company is entering a restructuring phase, focusing on international markets and repositioning our business unit. I opened the envelope, scanning the words, immediate termination. They offered 3 months' pay, a positive reference letter, and requested I return my laptop and badge before leaving the premises. I looked up. You're letting me go right before a nearly $40 million contract is signed? Craig glanced at his hands, tone softer. This is a strategic decision, it's not about that contract. I packed my things in silence. It felt like folding years of my life into a cardboard box. Every project, every late night, every rushed lunch between client calls. When I sealed the top, I stood tall. This Monday, when Hannah doesn't see me in that room, you'll understand what a real strategic mistake looks like. No one said a word as I walked out, carrying the chill of the moment and a clarity that some lessons only come when it's too late. I left the Vistora Tech building just before noon. The June sun scorched my skin. My badge was deactivated, my laptop confiscated, my company email locked down in less than an hour. 6 years. Deleted in a handful of cold clicks. But I didn't get angry. I didn't lash out, didn't write a long, bitter email like so many people do when they get pushed out. Instead, I sat quietly in a small cafe 2 blocks from the office, ordered an espresso, and pulled out my phone. The last message from Hannah was still there, sent the night before. Be ready for Monday. My executive board was really impressed with your proposal. I believe this deal will be a big milestone for both sides. I set the phone down and stared silently out at the street. Maybe their biggest mistake wasn't firing me. It was not knowing who I was to Hannah. Hannah and I once shared a cheap apartment in Houston for 2 years during college. We split instant noodles, pulled all-nighters together, struggled through reality like every other broke student. After graduation, we went our separate ways, but our friendship never faded. We didn't text daily, but every time we met, it felt like we'd never been apart. I never used that relationship to my advantage. Everything JTX considered was based on the trust they had in the solution I proposed. Hannah understood my capabilities, and I was sure she had no idea I'd been removed from the project. And I had no intention of telling her, at least not before the signing. I spent the whole afternoon drafting an email to myself, a personal record of everything I'd done with JTX. The data analysis steps, the meetings, the solution design, technical feedback, and even the countless revisions I made to the simulations based on their engineering team's input. Not for credit, just to remind myself I earned this. That evening, I declined drinks with a few old friends in the industry. Instead, I updated my LinkedIn profile discreetly. No mention of Vistora Tech, no jabs at anyone. I simply added, currently seeking the right opportunity in strategic logistics development. On Saturday, Hannah called, as she always did on weekends when she was in Austin. I picked up, her tone cheerful. Remember to wear a proper suit Monday morning. The JTX board guys are pretty old school. They still like the serious look. I smiled and kept my voice even. Don't worry, I'll be ready. Pretty sure I've never seen a deal go this smoothly. I think it'll close fast. I thanked her, never mentioning I'd been fired. Not because I wanted revenge, because they needed to feel the consequences of underestimating those who deliver real value. Sunday night, I deleted my entire calendar but still set an alarm for 7 a.m. I woke right on time, pulled on a gray t-shirt and joggers, made myself a coffee, and sat by the window, calm, waiting. At 9:15, my phone buzzed. A message from Hannah. Just got here, room's packed. Leonard looks more nervous than usual. Drinks to celebrate tonight? I typed back. Let me know if anything interesting happens. At 9:32, the phone rang again. The name on screen. Hannah Myers. I answered. Her first words almost made me laugh out loud. Eric, are they out of their minds? I leaned back in my chair, voice steady. What happened? I walked in. You weren't there. I asked right away, where's Eric? Leonard said you were taking some time off and no longer managing the project. I stopped him right there. I told them if you're not involved, then this contract needs to be put on hold. She paused, then added, now it's chaos in the CEO's office. I'm waiting outside. Leonard keeps making calls. I don't think they had any idea how close we are. I smiled. They're probably grateful now that nothing's been signed yet. Should I move forward? She asked. I looked out the window. Across the street, a freshly painted billboard for a logistics startup read, "Forget the process, deliver results." I replied, let's see what they do next. At 10:04 a.m., I was still in my small apartment overlooking Zilker Park, coffee now cold. My phone screen kept lighting up, missed calls from internal company numbers. Then Leonard. Then a strange number, probably legal. I didn't answer. A text from Hannah came in with just one sentence. I just shut them down. Then her number popped up again. I picked up. Eric, you need to hear this. I'm listening, I said calmly. I told the JTX board if the person who designed the solution wasn't in the room, then we need to revisit everything, Craig Hudson started stammering. Leonard pulled up some PowerPoint deck I'd never seen. I cut him off immediately. I leaned back, eyes drifting toward the trees, casting shadows in the midday sun. Hannah continued, voice sharp as a razor. I made it clear, without Eric, JTX will not sign. You're the only reason I even agreed to meet with Vistora Tech. I told them they're wasting my time. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence says more than words. The satisfaction I expected didn't come, just a deep, quiet stillness, like a heavy stone dropping into a calm lake. They're panicking now, Hannah added. Leonard just got pulled into Craig's office. Someone from legal is there. HR too. They're asking about verbal agreement obligations, but I told them straight, if you're not part of this, I'll talk to one of their competitors instead. I smiled. What do you think they'll do next? Call you. Beg you to come back. Didn't take 10 minutes. My phone rang again. Craig Hudson. Not an assistant, not a rep. I let it ring 3 times before answering, keeping my breath steady. Eric, his voice was tense. We need to talk right now. About what? I asked, though I already knew. About JTX. There seems to be some serious misunderstanding about your departure. I don't think there's any confusion, Craig, I replied, emphasizing each word. You and HR terminated my contract last Friday in a 12-minute meeting. I still have the paperwork. He stayed quiet for a moment, then spoke again, trying to sound friendly. Perhaps that decision was a little rushed. After speaking with Hannah, we realized you're a crucial part of this deal. Very crucial. You mean building the strategy, presenting the operation model, handling over 120 emails from JTX and 3 economy-class trips I paid for myself? Craig cleared his throat. We'd like to bring you back to finish the implementation. We can revisit the terms. I cut him off. My voice wasn't angry anymore. It was cold. Craig, on Friday, you told me I didn't fit your company's image. No flashy degree. And now you're calling because you're afraid of losing nearly $40 million? Craig fell silent. After a few seconds, he tried again. We could offer a higher title. Strategic Implementation Director. A better salary? Stock options? You don't get it, I said, standing up and stepping out to the balcony, looking down at the crowd below. This isn't about money anymore. It's about principle, about respect, about whether you value real contribution or just the appearance of it. There was a long pause. Then he asked, more quietly, is there any way you'd reconsider? I looked at my reflection in the window and replied firmly, no. I hung up. A text from Hannah came in right after, though they looked like they'd been slapped in the face. Asking about you nonstop, I've got full control now. I replied, Let them deal with it. It's not our move yet. That afternoon, an email arrived from Craig Hudson's address. Subject line, proposal to rejoin. Attached was a 3-page PDF. A rehire offer with double the salary, a new title, Senior Strategic Business Director, stock options after 6 months, and full authority over the JTX project going forward. At the bottom was a note. Our terms are open to discussion. We deeply value your contributions and hope to rebuild trust. I read the whole thing, then closed the file. I didn't need time to think. What made me walk out last Friday wasn't money or a job title. It was the feeling of being dismissed by people who saw only academic credentials, not the real value behind them. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. This time, it was Helen Marlowe, the chief financial officer, the only person on the leadership team who had stood up for me a few times. Eric, she said quickly, I wasn't in this morning's meeting, but I've heard. I'm truly sorry. This shouldn't have happened. I don't blame you, I replied. Craig wants to arrange a face-to-face meeting with you and Leonard to clear things up. Would you consider it? We're genuinely willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. I took a slow breath. Helen, I don't need a meeting to know I wasn't sidelined because of my performance. It was because of my degree. They wanted to use me as the foundation, then roll out the red carpet for someone else to shine. And now that carpet's been ripped away. I understand. But if you came back, you could prove them wrong. I already did, I answered. They just weren't humble enough to see it. The next morning, Craig sent me a message directly. We've spoken again with the board. If you're willing to return, we'd like to appoint you as Vice President of Strategic Development. You could start as early as next week. The salary is yours to name. We can also discuss equity. I sat quietly in front of the message for nearly 5 minutes. A part of me wanted to reply with something sharp, but instead I simply typed, "Yeah." Immediately after, Craig called from his direct number. Eric, I don't understand, he said, frustration thick in his voice. I'm offering you everything you've ever wanted. No, you're offering me everything you think I wanted, I replied. What I needed was respect, something you destroyed in a single meeting. We were wrong, I admit that. But who doesn't make mistakes? You didn't make a mistake, you made a choice. You chose someone with a shinier diploma, regardless of who actually delivered the value. That's not a mistake, that's a mindset. Craig went silent. I continued. You said you needed someone with Fortune 500 experience, but you didn't bother asking if I'd ever saved a collapsing project, worked through the night to meet a client deadline, or sat in a room with a CTO threatening to cancel. You didn't care, because I didn't come from the Ivy League. This doesn't matter anymore, he argued weakly. What matters is the future. No, Craig, the past shows how you treat people. I hung up. There was no anger, only a firm clarity. I would never return to a place that dismissed people just because they lacked a prestigious badge. That night, while washing dishes, I got a message from Hannah. I just sent Vistoratech an official email stating that JTX will pause negotiations indefinitely due to the loss of a key team member without prior notice. They're panicking. I replied, if they still don't get it, then they're not worth understanding. My phone buzzed again, a strange number from New York. I didn't answer. They had their chance, and they made the wrong call. That afternoon, while reading the latest updates on AI trends in logistics on my tablet, I got a call from Hannah. Got a minute? She asked, her tone a mix of serious and excited. I'm listening. I just had lunch with Greg Wilson, remember him? 1 year ahead of us, econ major at UT. The name rang a bell. Greg Wilson, founder of Wilson Enterprise, the rising logistics software company everyone's saying will overtake Vistoratech in 3 years? Exactly, Hannah said immediately. They're scaling fast, but lacking someone with strategic vision and enterprise client relationships. I told him about you, and Greg instantly said he wanted to meet. Would you be open to sitting down with him? I paused, not from hesitation, but from the uncanny feeling that everything was falling into place too perfectly. I'll call him now, I replied. 3 hours later, I was seated at a classic-style cafe in downtown Austin. Greg Wilson arrived right on time. Tall, lean, short hair, sharp eyes, and a refreshingly genuine smile. No fancy dress shirt, no stiff tie. Just a light blue button-up, sleeves rolled, and a surprisingly relaxed demeanor. Eric, I've heard a lot from Hannah. Your work at Vistoratech is seriously impressive. I was just doing my job, I said as we shook hands. No. You built one of the biggest transportation contracts in the South, and, in a way, I respect. Less talk, more results. We ordered coffee and settled in. The conversation lasted nearly 90 minutes, and not once did he ask about degrees, GPA, or what school I'd gone to. Greg asked how I analyzed JTX's operations, how I got their engineering team to buy into a hybrid model, and how I maintained open dialogue with a notoriously tough CEO like Hannah. When I finished, Greg looked me in the eye. I don't care where you graduated from, I only look at two things: how you solve problems and what people say about you when you're not in the room. I nodded slightly. I need someone like you here, Eric. Wilson Enterprise is growing faster than our enterprise client management can keep up. I want to bring you on as Director of Business Development. Base salary twice the market average, equity, and full autonomy to define our enterprise strategy. I sat still, letting the offer sink in. I don't need someone who just closes deals. I need someone clients will follow, no matter what logo is on the contract. I took a sip of coffee and said, "You'll have my answer by the end of the day." Greg smiled. "I hope it's yes, but if you need anything, just reach out." That evening, I received an email from Greg. Attached, official offer letter. I opened it. The salary made me reread the line. The equity package was bigger than anything offered to mid-level executives before. Full benefits, even a relocation stipend if I wanted to move closer to their North Austin HQ. I didn't hesitate. I signed. Sent the scanned copy back. Then I called Hannah. "It's done," I said. Her laughter echoed through the phone, pure satisfaction. "Perfect, because this coming Monday I have my first meeting with Wilson's strategy team to explore long-term partnerships. And I think it'll be fun if you're sitting next to me at that table." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Welcome to Wilson," she said, "as you deserve." 1 week later, I walked into Wilson Enterprises headquarters in North Austin for the first time as Director of Business Development. No flashy welcome, no red carpet, just a sleek, modern workspace where everyone stayed busy and no one wore arrogance like a badge. Greg met me in the third-floor lobby, shook my hand, and got straight to the point. "Tomorrow night's the closed-door meeting with Hannah and JTX's strategy board. All eyes will be on us. I don't need you to dazzle them, Eric. I need you to make them believe they're choosing the right guy." I nodded. No words needed. Every detail of the new proposal was already etched in my mind like a printed blueprint. No need for flashy charts or hollow slogans. What I had now was something Orion Tech never gave me: autonomy and absolute trust in my capability. The meeting was held in a private room at the Intercontinental Hotel. Hannah arrived on time with 3 members of JTX's board, people I'd only briefly met during a virtual call back at Vistoratech. When I walked in, she stood and shook my hand, her eyes filled with both joy and confidence. "Ready?" she asked. "I've been ready," I replied. The presentation lasted 2 hours. I didn't recycle anything I'd used while representing Vistoratech. Instead, I introduced a completely new system built on Wilson's in-house AI platform, capable of learning and optimizing delivery workflows in real time. The price wasn't lower, but the deployment quality and customization were far superior. When I finished, a long silence hung in the air. Then Hannah looked at me, her satisfaction clear. "I don't think we need more time." The next day, industry news exploded. JTX Logistics signs $45 million deal with Wilson Enterprise. Ends over a year of negotiations with a major competitor. Even though the contract value was nearly 10% lower than Vistoratech's original proposal, the market understood why. In a brief statement to the press, Hannah said, "We chose the solution best aligned with long-term value, not based on brand or reputation." Analyst reports immediately pointed out Wilson's advantage in modular technology, rapid integration, and personalized deployment support, areas where Vistoratech had fallen behind for the past 3 quarters. On LinkedIn, industry groups started buzzing. The same names that once praised Vistoratech were now expressing concern about leadership direction, talent retention, and lack of organizational agility. I said nothing, no posts, no interviews. I let silence do the work. Because sometimes their actions speak louder than any words. Within 3 days, my Wilson inbox received over 10 partnership inquiries from major logistics firms looking to explore potential collaborations. Greg called me into his office after reading the latest headlines. We didn't just win a contract. We just landed the first blow to the market's faith in Vistoratech. I simply replied, "First blow, but it won't be the last." There was no need for revenge through noise. In this world, sometimes silence hits the hardest. On a Tuesday morning, less than 3 weeks after JTX signed with Wilson, I got a text from an unknown number. Danielle Fulton was fired this morning. Reason: failure to retain key personnel, resulting in loss of strategic accounts. No signature, but I knew exactly who sent it. 3 minutes later, Philip, my former colleague who once defended me during a meeting with Leonard, sent a follow-up. Vistoratech stock has dropped nearly 30% this month. Internal rumors are blowing up. 20% workforce reduction, leadership shakeup. People are panicking. Reading it didn't bring joy, just confirmation of what I'd already predicted. When a company starts devaluing the people who truly build value, the numbers will eventually betray them. That afternoon, Greg knocked on my door. "There's a resume you should see," he said, placing a printout on my desk. I flipped it over. "Philip, what did he say when he applied?" I asked. "Not much, just one sentence. I want to work at a place where people like Eric are trusted from the start." I leaned back in my chair. "Hire him. Put him in charge of the renewable energy client group." Back at Vistoratech, he handled the Evergrid contract with precision. Greg nodded. "Agreed. And here's some good news. We've just been invited to pitch to Novarail, one of Vistoratech's top 3 clients last year." I couldn't hold back a smile. "They reached out to us?" "No. They called JTX asking why they switched to Wilson." Hannah's reply: "Talk to Eric Sanderson. You'll understand." I stood up and looked out into the hallway. Rows of desks now packed with new hires. In less than 8 months, Wilson Enterprise had added 2 more floors, launched 3 new departments, and grown its active contract value by over 150%. That didn't even include the pending deals with 2 federal transportation groups. The next morning, I stumbled across an article on a professional network. The title: "When a Degree Can't Save a Company, The Slow Collapse of Vistoratech from Within." It was written by a former senior engineer, someone who had left 2 weeks earlier. The article described exactly what I'd witnessed: arrogance in leadership, internal policies favoring academic prestige over real performance, and a mass exodus of talent who no longer believed in the executive team's strategy. I didn't comment, didn't click like. I just forwarded the link to Greg with a short note. "Let's prepare for 3 new hires next month." 2 months later, Wilson won its second contract from Vistoratech, this time from Landport, a client that once generated nearly 12% of my former company's annual revenue. We didn't even offer a cheaper bid. Landport chose Wilson for one reason: our team listens and moves fast. During the quarterly review meeting, Greg stood in the center of the room holding a packet of color printouts. "We're on pace to exceed annual revenue targets 3 quarters ahead of schedule," he announced. "And honestly, a large part of that is thanks to one bad decision made by another company." His eyes locked onto mine, but he didn't have to say a name. Everyone in the room already knew. After the meeting, I returned to my office, opened a desk drawer, and pulled out my bachelor's degree from Texas State. The frame's corner was a little worn from moving, but I kept it just as I'd received it. I hung it on the wall, not to prove anything, but as a reminder. Sometimes the thing people underestimate the most is what ends up bringing down an empire. 3 days after the quarterly meeting, Greg knocked on my door at 7:30 a.m. Earlier than usual, no folders, no assistant, just a cup of coffee and an unusually serious expression. "Got a minute?" Greg asked, sitting across from me. "Always," I replied, setting down my pen. "What's up?" Greg reached into his pocket, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it on my desk. I looked at him, waiting for the explanation. "The executive board met privately last night. They agreed it's time for Wilson to have someone leading long-term revenue strategy, someone who not only understands the market but knows how to connect people to purpose. And no one fits that better than you." I opened the envelope, The bold headline read, Appointment Letter, Chief Revenue Officer, Eric Sanderson. I read each clause slowly. Responsibilities included overseeing global growth strategy, full authority to build and expand the business division, and direct collaboration with the executive team to lead high-level deals. Alongside that came a new equity bonus, long-term investment support, and, most importantly, unquestionable trust. I looked up. Are you sure? Greg smiled. More sure than ever. What you've done in the past 8 months wasn't just transform revenue, it changed how we see talent. I nodded. Then I accept. Our handshake needed no ceremony, no confetti, just two people putting faith in each other at the right moment. But for me, it meant more than any title ever granted. 1 week later, I moved into my new office, the top floor of our headquarters with windows overlooking the Austin skyline. Not massive, not flashy, but every detail reflected Wilson's spirit, transparent, modern, and real. I personally nailed my bachelor's in finance from Texas State to the main wall. Simple wooden frame, silver trim, slightly worn over time. A new assistant stepped in with my weekly schedule. It was filled with meetings, with partners, investors, and 3 potential clients that used to be exclusive to Vistoratech. I nodded. Add 1 more slot for an internal session with the strategy team. I want to build a performance-based profit-sharing model. She blinked. You want to share profits with the tech and implementation teams too? And finance, I said. No one gets a ship this far alone. Meanwhile, Vistoratech's storm hadn't passed. 3 major financial outlets ran headlines simultaneously. Vistoratech up for sale after 3 consecutive quarters of losses. CEO Craig Hudson resigns. An internal source revealed the board was negotiating a sale to a Boston-based investment fund at a price over 40% lower than last year's valuation. I didn't feel triumphant, just a hint of regret, because if they had trusted the right people, the outcome might have been different. But that's the price of valuing resumes over results and mistaking polish for strength. Late one night, after the lights were out on my floor, I stood in front of that framed diploma. Sometimes I wondered if it had ever caused someone to misjudge me. But then I realized, it doesn't matter what others see in that piece of paper. What matters is that I know where I started and where I stand now. I brushed the edge of the frame, then turned back to my desk. There was still more work to do, but I no longer had to fight to be trusted. I just had to keep doing what I always had and let the results speak for themselves. Eric's story is living proof that success doesn't come from the name on a degree. It comes from the real value you bring. Though once pushed aside for lacking a prestigious diploma, he proved his worth through action and outcomes. From being fired, Eric rose to become the chief revenue officer at a rival company, leading a team that overtook the market. He didn't seek revenge through words. He let success speak for him. What do you think of Eric's journey? Did he make the right call by walking away? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and inspiring life stories about career and family.